Hello, everyone, and warm welcome to today's webinar, Doing Business in Israel, the Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement and Trade and Innovation Opportunities for BC Companies. The webinar is organized by the BC government in partnership with the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service and the Canada-Israel Chamber of Commerce. My name is Ganna Drost. I'm manager in the Trade Policy and Negotiations branch, BC Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. I'm joined today by my colleague, Benjamin Kaliznik, Senior Manager in the same branch, and by our distinguished guests. Madam Galit Baram, Consul General of Israel in Toronto and Western Canada. Stanley Gomez, Counselor and Senior Trade Commissioner at the Embassy of Canada in Israel. Oded Orgil, President at the Canada-Israel Chamber of Commerce. Amir Zaidman, Vice President of Business Development at the Kitchen, and Wei Nin, National Program Coordinator at the National Research Council of Canada Industrial Research Assistance Program. So, dear speakers, we are thankful for your availability and are very excited to have your expertise and input in this webinar. This webinar is part of webinar series where we talk about Canada's free trade agreements advantages and how British Columbian companies can benefit from those when engaging in international trade. So before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so that you know what to expect and how to participate in today's session. So the webinar will last approximately 1 hour and 30 minutes, and there will be 5 presentations in total. We will start with the opening remarks by the Consul General, Galit Baram, and we'll move to a quick presentation of Canada's free trade agreements, Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement, and then we'll move to doing business in Israel and how BC companies can take advantage of export and partner opportunities there. These 2 presentations will be delivered by Stanley and I, and we will then move to Oded's presentation of the support that the Canada-Israel Chamber of Commerce is offering to intensify Canada-Israel trade. Then we will jump into Amir's presentation of the Israeli food tech landscape and opportunities that it offers to companies like you. Finally, Wei will walk us through the joint Canada-Israel 2020-21 collaborative industrial research and development call for proposals that is open for collaborative Canada-Israel projects focused on developing innovative products, processes, and technology-based services. We will have Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and you will have an opportunity to submit text questions to presenters by typing them into questions pane of the control panel at any time during the webinar. And please indicate the name of the speaker who you want the question to be answered by. If you run out of time at the Q&A session, we will follow up with you individually. And you may also wish to explore the handouts session of the GoToWebinar panel, where you will find today's presentation deck and also information on Canada's International Free Trade Agreements application in different sectors. You will receive a recording of today's webinar along with the presentations in the follow-up email. So without further ado, I now pass the floor to Madam Galit Baram, Consul General of Israel in Toronto and Western Canada, for the opening remarks. Madam Galit Baram, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ganna, and thank you all for finding the time to join us today, this morning in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, in Israel. It's a great opportunity, as I see it, to bring people together and to discuss business. I'm glad to see my colleague Stanley Gomez, a Canadian representing your country in Israel. I'm doing the same here, representing Israel in Canada, and our good friends here from the Canada-Israel Chamber of Commerce, they're here as well. This is a great opportunity. Within 1997, one of the leading countries in the world when it comes to innovation and technology, Canada has a lot to offer with innovative hubs, mainly in the Greater Toronto area and in British Columbia, and it attracts a lot of attention on the side of the Israeli business community. Now with COVID, and management of info. But on the other hand, there is a lot of activity that is conducted online, such as this event, for example. And the promising thing that is happening is that we see a rising number of Canadian companies that participate in economic events in Israel and events that have to do with Israeli innovation and technology. And this is wonderful because geography no longer is an obstacle. There is no need to purchase a ticket and fly to Israel and spend money on that. Everything is conducted easily online. And at least until after this pandemic is behind us, there is great potential actually to learn about opportunities in the Israeli market and for Israelis to learn about opportunities here in Canada. So what can I say? I hope that this pandemic will soon be behind us. We'll be able to meet each other in person. We'll be able to travel again between Israel and Canada. There is so much to do and so much to achieve. I would like to wish all the participants good luck in finding partners, in finding opportunities, whether in the Israeli market or in the Canadian market. As we say in Hebrew, Hatzlachatchem, Hatzlachatenu. Your success is our success. And I would like to say that we at the Israeli Consulate in Toronto and Western Canada are at your service. We're very active on social media. We're Israel in Toronto, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. We're active on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you, Madam Consul General. We'll be switching our cameras off for the time of presentation, and we'll turn them back on for the Q&A session. So let's get started. The branch I work in represents BC interests in free trade agreement negotiations and trade disputes that affect BC. We also work to increase businesses' awareness of the opportunities that free trade agreements offer, and we do assist businesses dealing with trade issues that they face. So today, we'll go over a little about our ministry, what free trade agreements do, Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement, and what opportunities it offers for goods. I will also show you some tools and resources at the end of the presentation. I understand that FTAs are long, complex, and might be technical, and I'm here to help you to navigate their web. So if you have a question or concern, please raise your hand, send your question in, and we will address it. So the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation aims to make life more affordable for British Columbians by building a strong, sustainable economy and improve the standard of living. There are many ways to foster this economic recovery and growth. One way is to encourage businesses to leverage the opportunities found in free trade agreements and, of course, diversify their export markets. And this is our job today. With that, I'd like to kick it off with a short welcome video from the Minister of State for Trade, who will explain what support is available to you.
Hello, I'm George Chow, Minister of State for Trade. I'm pleased to add my support and welcome you to this session. The goal for this session is to share the benefits and opportunity of Canada's domestic and international free trade agreements, and to ensure that everyone in BC's diverse regions, communities, and sectors receive the information needed. Free trade agreements help open new markets as well as advance and protect BC's competitive advantages. They are a critical part of attracting new investment into BC's regions. They apply to all sectors of the economy, including forestry, agricultural, intellectual property, clean tech, and mining, to name just a few. I'm proud to say that last year, we held close to 50 information sessions like this one with approximately 1,500 participants covering all of BC's regions. We have also held sessions for Indigenous businesses and women-owned businesses. Now, because of COVID-19, we're continuing the webinars, and my hope is we can resume in-person sessions when the time is right. The COVID-19 pandemic has made international trade much more challenging for the foreseeable future. Thankfully, the very good news is Canada has 14 free trade agreements covering 51 countries, including a new Canada-US-Mexico agreement and agreement with the European Union, Japan, Korea, and many others that, if used correctly, can help lower your costs and provide much needed certainty in these uncertain times. Free trade agreements are complex. My staff are here today to help you understand how they work. I want to ensure that you are supported as you plan for the future. We're also offering help with export and trade readiness through our Export Navigator program. And we have in-market experts and other resources available in Canada that you will hear about today. I wish you all a successful info session. Thank you.
Free trade agreements do. And of course, if you're familiar at all with the World Trade Organization and the access that that provides to you as a business, that is sort of the key jumping off point for free trade agreements. They build on that access. It is trade between two or more jurisdictions. That's what free trade agreements do. They create that economic trade relationship. And so if we're talking about the Canada-Israel agreement, of course, that is a bilateral agreement. But of course, Canada is also a member of more than just bilateral agreements and is involved in many multilateral agreements as well. And so I think most people tend to think about free trade agreements as tariff reduction tools. And of course, that is one of the more tangible aspects of free trade agreements. But so reducing tariffs, of course, means that that they reduce costs for you as a business. But free trade agreements typically cover much more than just goods access. They cover goods, but they also cover services, investment, government procurement, intellectual property, things like the environment and labor. And there seems to be overall a bit of there's a progression in terms of Canada's FTAs. The more traditional FTAs, such as the Canada-Israel FTA when it was first negotiated, were really more goods focused. And as time has gone on and Canada's FTAs have been more modernized, they have tended to cover more of those elements that you see in the fourth bullet on the screen. In particular, on the labor and environment side, but also on the inclusive trade side. And so, what inclusive trade means is that more and more Canada's trade agenda is that it is more and more concerned with ensuring that the benefits of trade and the opportunities that come out of free trade agreements are felt by as much of the population as possible. And so that includes Indigenous and women and so Canada's FTAs have really been modernized in that sense. And I think just quickly, the other thing that FTAs do are that they provide a recourse for disputes. And that is really just all about providing certainty and knowing that when we enter into free trade agreements, we have the free trade agreements themselves have teeth and the opportunity to hold trade partners accountable for the obligations that they have signed on for. And really, lastly, just remembering that free trade agreements are a two-way street. Canada takes on those obligations, but our FTA partners take them on as well. Okay, this slide is really just meant to give you a sense of the landscape, Canada's international free trade agreement landscape. Canada has 14 trade agreements that cover 51 countries, 60% of the world's GDP, with access to 1.5 billion consumers. And on this map, you can see a network of our FTAs. Light blue are the FTAs that have already been implemented. And there's a little bit of a caveat here. Our map needs to be updated, but you may have heard that the United Kingdom left the European Union on December 31st, 2020. And so Canada-EU the Canada-EU trade agreement, CIFTA, stopped applying to Canada-UK trade. There is a bilateral trade continuity agreement in place. And so while this agreement is being ratified, there were arrangements made on both ends to ensure that that preferential trade continues without interruption. And so technically the UK on this map should be dark blue, and until that agreement has been ratified. So sometimes as I said, we have bilateral and other times multilateral agreements, and sometimes those overlap. And with this map, you can see the stripe pattern is really what indicates that overlap. And Canada is in FTAs with Mexico through the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, as well as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. And that's where you see the stripe pattern. That's where you would see both of those agreements have been implemented, and so that's why that Mexico remains a solid blue color there. I think the last thing I'll say on this slide is really just that Canada really has a first mover advantage. It has been active in concluding and modernizing free trade agreements over the last decade or so. I guess more active than it had been before that. But the point that we often like to make is that this preference will not last forever. As we hear more and more of other countries negotiating free trade agreements with some of our other trade partners. And so just recognizing that the preferences and the advantages that you have doesn't last forever, and trying to establish those connections and those trade relationships earlier than later is an advantage. Okay, let's jump into what you are all here to hear about, and that is the Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement, or the CIFTA. It is not, I guess, as widely known as some of Canada's other agreements. We know that there has been some research done in the last year or so about the awareness of free trade agreements, and unfortunately, the overall awareness and utilization of free trade agreements in Canada is not as high as I think we would like them to be. And some of Canada's FTAs are more or less known. I think, as Consul General mentioned at the beginning, this agreement was originally concluded back in 1997 and is Canada's second oldest trade agreement after the NAFTA, or now CUSMA. The CIFTA was in the modernization process for the last several years, and the modernized agreement entered into force on September 1st, 2019. And up until now, the Canada-Israel trade balance in goods has shown a fairly steady increase, and it actually exceeded $1.6 billion in 2019. Trade data shows that Israel exports to Canada are actually 3 or 4 times more than going the opposite way from Canada to Israel. That said, Canada's exports to Israel have doubled over time. Canada is among the top suppliers of fish and seafood to Israel, and BC is the 4th largest trading partner of Israel within the Canadian provinces. CIFTA created a level playing field for BC and Canadian companies with the United States that had already had a trade agreement with Israel. It also maintained an advantage for Canada when Israel concluded trade agreements with the EU and Turkey, among others. So, of course, there is difference between each trade agreement. Each trade agreement is unique and provides a certain level of access. But as I said earlier, taking advantage of those provisions as soon as possible is to your advantage. Okay, let's jump into some opportunities for goods. I think I've just heard from Ghana, and she's still having some problems getting back in. So I will continue the best I can. I apologize for the interruption. Tariff elimination and reduction. Tariffs on all from day one. The agreement has eliminated all tariffs on Canadian industrial goods and on most agricultural, fish, and seafood products. The modernized CIFTA reduced tariffs on agricultural, agri-food, fish, and seafood products even further. For example, 98% of Canadian fish and seafood exports enter Israel duty-free in unlimited quantities, and this is up from around 90%. Halibut, cod, salmon, tuna, and many others are now duty-free. Among key Canadian agricultural products that benefit from the new duty-free access are things like cranberries, baked goods, pet food, for instance. Other commodities like canola oil and shelled beans had their tariffs reduced by 40 to 50%, so quite significantly. And it is worth noting that some of the Canadian goods that are excluded from tariff elimination and can be checked on the list A of Israel's tariff schedule under the CIFTA. And so there are, in the next slide, I think we're going to take a look at just things like quotas as well. And so sometimes even when the tariffs haven't been reduced, Canada can gain additional access for certain products into a market such as Israel when the quota allocations are increased, and in other words, the amount that is eligible to enter either duty-free or at a reduced tariff rate. When those quotas are adjusted, giving us increased access, then there's another advantage there. And that is what we see here on this next slide. This is just a snapshot of some examples here of agri-products like fish and seafood that have been given volume limited duty-free access under the modernized agreement. As I said, these are known as tariff rate quotas. And I think this is all great news. You can see in this table which Canadian commodities received expanded or newly created duty-free access, things like chickpeas, wine, frozen vegetables, apples, dried fruits and nuts, and others. And as I said, this table is not exhaustive, but if you are interested in a particular commodity, we can certainly do the research for you and let you know what that is. Okay, just very quickly, I'm going to just mention a very handy tool. What you can see on the screen here is something called Canada Tariff Finder, and this is, I mean, if you were to Google this app, it will come up very quickly. It is a very quick and easy way to help you figure out tariffs in the markets where Canada has FTAs, including Israel. And all you need to know is the market that you are interested in. You need to decide whether you're exporting or importing, and then you need to describe the product. You can in that description box, you can either just actually describe the product, or if you know the HS code for your product, you can also just type that in. And once you do that, the system may ask you a couple of questions about your product just to ensure that it knows what exactly you were looking for. And once you've identified that exactly, it will show you the current tariff rates. And I'm not going to do a live demonstration because I know we're short on time, but it will show you the current rates as well as any phase out in those rates under the relevant free trade agreements. So it's just a very handy tool to get a sense of what those tariffs are, but also get a sense of, perhaps 5 years from now, a product that you produce will be duty free in a particular market, and you may want to sort of look at opportunities there and plan for that tariff reduction. Okay, this is just a quick slide on opportunities for goods beyond tariffs. Things like improved rules of origin and advanced rulings to claim preferential treatment. This is a feature of all of Canada's FTAs. Really just know that you need to prove that the country of origin for your product is within the free trade area, so within Canada or Israel. And of course, there are rules, often very complex. This is something that we're happy to walk you through if you have a question about whether your good qualifies to receive the preferential treatment under a free trade agreement. We can walk through those rules. We can work with our colleagues at the federal government to determine whether that they meet those requirements. The modernized CIFTA has reduced the number of product-specific rules of origin in half. So that really reduces the administrative burden for you as a business. The modernized agreement also includes trade facilitation measures that promote simple, clear, and predictable procedures designed to reduce red tape at the border. It also protects and enforces intellectual property rights, which really improves business confidence in a foreign market. It also facilitates cooperation and exchange of information on IP rights. Both Canada and Israel have made commitments to reduce and eliminate technical barriers to trade. This includes things like conformity assessment procedures, technical regulations, standard-related measures that can't be used as unjustified barriers to trade. Both countries have agreed that they will strive to minimize and eliminate those barriers wherever possible. And finally, there is a new chapter on e-commerce, and it is really just, it was brought into force just recognizing the importance in our daily lives of e-commerce, and the pandemic has shown us that this has become even more important. Both countries committed not to levy customs duties, fees, and other charges on digital products that are transmitted electronically. And the chapter also includes commitments to protect personal information of e-commerce users and also protect them from fraudulent commercial practices such as online scams. So this is Ghana's last slide. I don't think we've got her rejoined yet, so I will just keep going. Our trade policy and negotiations branch is here to support you and can really answer any questions that you might have about trade agreements, trade barriers, or other trade-related issues. There are many different contact boxes here, but I'll highlight just a few. Trade readiness and services branch box. Here you can find a link to the BC's Export Navigator program. This provides free support and guidance to help your business grow outside of BC, with 7 offices in all of BC's regions. They are community based. They have community-based export specialists who can help connect your business to market information, export programs, financial services, and business development experts. BC also has its own network of trade and investment representative offices. Offices in many countries, including the US, the Asia Pacific, and Europe. They are there to assist BC companies to export their goods and services to specific markets. They can provide you with local market knowledge and intelligence. They can help to identify key contacts in market and assist with targeting trade shows and visits to markets. And I will let Stanley talk to the federal trade support services available in a bit. And also, Ghana, I think, just wanted to mention that we're also really interested to hear about any barriers you are facing. There is a very quick way to report a trade barrier, which is listed on the site. It's a hyperlink. So when you get a copy of this presentation, if you click on that link there, it will take you directly to a Government of Canada webpage where you can report a trade barrier. But we are also very happy to hear of any of these barriers so that we can work with our federal colleagues to make sure that they're at least known and then addressed as quickly as possible. Finally, I'll just note that there are several social media channels there that where you can get the latest updates on different markets and any activities that are going on in our division. Okay, that's the end of Ghana's presentation. I think we still have the other presenters connected, and so I'm going to now hand it off to Stanley to jump right into his presentation. And please, I know I've seen quite a few questions coming in through the question pane, so please continue to do that, and we will address those later on. Go ahead, Stanley.
Sure, perfect. Thank you, everybody, and greetings from Tel Aviv. Hopefully this slide. I thought I'd start off by showing you a map of Israel, not because I wanted you to see the map of Israel, but because typically when I meet Canadians, they will talk to me about Tel Aviv, and they'll talk to me about Jerusalem, but they don't always know a little bit about the country. So we're based in Tel Aviv, and if you are in Tel Aviv going up north, you'll take about 2.5 hours, depending on how fast you go, and you'll run across this port city of Haifa in Tel Aviv, or some of the bigger malls, which is one of Israel's major universities, and around that comes the ecosystem that comes with it. Being north and close to the port, it's also the industrial hub. So a lot of the refineries, the petrochemical industries are all based there. Back down into Tel Aviv, if you go across about 10 kilometers, you're really within the tech hub of Tel Aviv, and this is really where you'll find all the concentration of the tech companies. Jerusalem typically does not have a big tech hub. It tends to be more the seat of the government, and of course the Hebrew University is located there. From Tel Aviv, if you drive down to the bottom, it's about 4 hours, 4.5 hours, depending again on how fast you drive. And on your way down, you'll run into the city of Beersheba. Beersheba is just the beginning of your entrance into the Negev desert. And this is really where most of the technology around clean tech, water, and the industries that, and most of this is also located there. See here. Its GDP is listed out there. It's about, most of Israel's GDP comes from services, like Canada, something is not government. Another interesting stat that we always talk about is that 8.5% to 9% of the economy really is responsible for the majority of the exports, which is mainly in the tech business. And you can see a general theme here. Most of the economy is focused around tech, and needless to say, it drives a lot of decision making on how businesses run. Next slide, please. I think that systematically there are a couple of things that we run into as two countries. For both of us, the U.S. is the greatest trading partner, and by that I mean the first thing the Canadians will think about is how do I get to looking east. We are doing this presentation today. I'd say most of the Canadian companies I speak to have teams, sales teams, marketing teams, whatever you call them, who are either European focused or Middle Eastern focused. And when you think about the Middle East, you tend to be more Arab country focused. So we'll find during Arab Health in Dubai or Gulf Foods, you'll see that Canada has 30, 40 companies in the pavilion, and up to recently, getting from Middle East to between we'll move a little bit more traffic. The job of the government is to make sure that the infrastructure for business is in place, and that's a big part of what we've done over the years. We've talked about the free trade agreement only, but the only thing I'll say to that is when you as a business go to clear your goods in customs, or you're trying to find tariff information, not many people realize that is a function of the free trade agreement. So bear in mind that behind just the tariff issue, there is a whole bunch of infrastructure that goes into place, which really makes things happen. And for the most part, in our experience trading with this here and there, that's where Canada has only 4 or 5 of these agreements globally, and so does Israel. And that should give you the significance of what each signs at the forefront of our connectivity. Zoom does replace some of the travel, but if you can't get from A to B quickly, you're less likely to jump on a plane. And thankfully, right up to recently, Air Canada was flying daily, fairly connected. And yeah, a lot of people may not know, but a lot of our leading research centers like the IDRC, I think I've met almost 15, 16 vice presidents of universities who come here regularly to talk about how they can do work together. And we're constantly listening to what they have to say, because you all know that almost every university nowadays has an incubator. These incubators are always looking for new tech, new ideas, and new money, and we're both in the same business of trying to make sure that we can grow this ecosystem. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, you folks would know, the Center for Brain and Aging Health, based out of Toronto. They work with the Rick Hansen Institute all the time, and they're plugged into a lot of the programming that goes on here in Israel, very much focused in the area of life sciences. So next slide, please. A very quick glimpse of this slide. Another question I'm always asked is, so what goes up and down in ships from between Israel and Canada? And much to my surprise, and perhaps to many of you, you'll see diamonds on the top of them. And of course, there's agriculture as our main two exports and imports. There's our aircraft parts and a whole bunch of other things. But interesting enough, I just thought I'd share that with you because I found it pretty interesting. Next slide, please. One of the things that we see from Canadian businesses coming over here to Israel is that there are certain themes that you'll find most of our institutional investors, I would say, the banks, the pension funds, they come here to look for emerging technologies and where they can put their money in the next generation company. This is not investing in companies specifically, but they're more in the fund of funds. We also see a lot of our major banks come here look for specific technology, whether it's in the area of big data or analytics is often the case, or anything that's customer facing, ad tech. That's the kind of stuff we see considerably. We see a lot of smaller companies coming by, and again, they're really looking for what I always call components of the technology supply chain. So whether it's a piece of software, a piece of hardware, or it's just tech collaboration is mainly what I see. We do have, of course, the traditional goods and services that go up and down. You'll notice on that list is a bunch of engineering companies that work on the light rail here in Israel. It's a big project. It's been going on for a couple of years. Bombardier is bidding for trains and a rolling stock supply there. And then, of course, there's the areas of space and aircraft. Next slide, please. So in this slide, the only thing I'll bear your attention is really that the first little icon that says Startup Central. What I really wanted to point to you is that there's this wonderful link there that you ought to really take a look at, and it's quite detailed. One of the few places I've been around the world where you can actually Google and find any kind of company you're looking for, whether you're trying to find a partner or you're interested to see what is available and what is Israel doing in this area. It's called the I have to put my glasses on to see them. It's called the Startup Central Finder. It's the Finder. It's called the Finder, and a very useful tool. And I encourage you guys to please take a look at it. You'll be surprised how information comes from there. The other two or the other three, I would say, on the list are really the big players in Israel. We work with them very closely, and if you're interested in to know more, feel free to Google them and check out their websites. Next slide, please. So as you know, we are the Trade Commission Service, and most of the programming that is done locally with Industry Canada or provinces tend to be very much focused internally. Our business is all about export, and I have to point this particular slide to you along with the link on the bottom, and I encourage you to look at this because it's pretty comprehensive and covers a lot of different areas. The first one being, if you're just an SME and you're looking to export, then you can apply for funds through there. And if you're in the space of innovation and you're trying to protect your IP or do something different, you can apply for Canada Innovation funding. The association is very much related to industry, aerospace industry, or technology industries. As an industry, you can apply for funding that allows you to have trade missions to Israel in any part of the world, to be fair. And of course, the final funding is about access for FDI into Canada if you want to do something specific to attract. Check this link out, it's pretty interesting, and I just put the link out, but if you browse through the next couple of pages below that, you'll see a whole host of other links. The next slide, please. Similarly, on the next slide, you'll see us talk about two major programs that we work with in global affairs. It's called the Canadian Technology Accelerator. The Canadian Technology Accelerator is really designed for us to put money together for certain thematic, I would say, thematic programming. And really the thematic program is where you can come to Israel with the particular group and focus on a sector that you are interested in. We were trying to do that just before COVID, and in that case, most of the money that we were putting into it and the company we were targeting were in the area of telemedicine. And I say telemedicine a bit loosely because in there is a whole host of companies that do things digitally in the area of medicine. So quite an interesting program. It's becoming more and more popular across the world as Canadian companies start to look at how do you take new tech that is not completely baked and done, yet get exposed to international markets, either to look for JVs and partnerships or including markets. The PDA, what we call, is the Product Development Accelerator. Another very interesting program. I encourage you again, please take a look at this. It's not available to all across. It's something unique to the Trade Commissioner Service. And if you want to look at that, again, this is, you've got an idea, you've got a product, it's not 100% done, but you'd like to put some more money into it and look internationally for ways to make it better. Very cool program, and I have to say, much to my surprise and often sadness, it's a bit undersubscribed, so please take a look at it. We also have programs for women in business. The CIFTA agreement very much has a chapter focused on gender, so we're really interested to see if we can tap companies led by women to take advantage of this programming as well. It is often used, but it's often used for the States, increasingly a little bit more towards Asia, but we haven't really done one here in Israel, and we'd love to do one. So again, take a look at that. The Accelerator Squared Up program is more domestic, but again, I encourage you to look at it. It's great information and will give you different ways that you can examine how you can grow your business. Next slide, please. Okay. So finally, we're on to what do we do here at the embassy, and where is the focus of our programming. So needless to say, we've been working on for the last year and a half on renewing the Industrial Cooperation Agreement. It is very much of interest to both our countries and many companies, hence the NRC is presenting at the end. And we really think that this new updated version will be much more interesting to companies because it's a bit more flexible in what you can and cannot do. Promoting CIFTA, we will always do that because it is one way for us to talk to our companies as we are today. And a big thank you to our colleagues in BC for doing this today. So from a macro level at our programming, our focus is very much in this. All you see here is what we started off with before COVID, and like you all know, everything that happened before COVID is just getting accelerated. But the themes of gender stay the same. The life science has been, in my experience, the place where Canada and Israel seem to have just an automatically natural fit. Whether it's in telemedicine, brain health, analytics, using technology to scan data, images, and give you results. There is a lot of work going in this area. Typically, we'd see a very strong showing of Canadians in Arab health in Dubai. We really think and hope that we can do something together. In fact, just before the lockdown, we were already planning for Expo in Dubai, where we were hoping to do work together with Canadian and Israeli companies in Dubai. But you know, it's all over the news and all over the TV now. But that's something we had started a couple of months way before all this came into being, and we're quite excited that this will be an interesting opportunity. In the area of innovation, and I mentioned the CTA, the Technology Accelerator Program, along with Waterloo, the City of Waterloo, and Communitech, we have put a cohort together, and we hope as soon as the COVID restrictions of travel are done, we'll pick that one up. In autonomous vehicles, we have Invest Ottawa, along with the Israeli Innovation Authority, are in discussions about how they can use the common ecosystem for both companies to test their technologies and work together with each other. In agriculture, most of our work here really is about trade policy. We talked about the free trade agreement, but a lot of the work we do is behind the scenes with customs and websites and make sure that information is easily available and accessible. I won't talk too much about the food sector because we have one of our colleagues coming up to present a little further down. Amir has a great presentation for you, and I think you'll be super excited. We wanted to bring him into this presentation so that you could see something that is not typically seen here. We always talk about tech. We don't always talk about food, but this is a very exciting area, and I'll let you look forward to that presentation. Now, we had plans to promote the CIFTA agreement through the major chefs programs here. We have everything in place to do it. We just got to make sure wait till the lockdowns to end, and we'll be off to the races. In the technology space, it's pretty, I don't call it bread and butter, but it's something we do every day. We have conversations about technology all the time. And finally, as I mentioned, we meet university professors here all the time. And generally, typically speaking, the Trade Commission Service does not do work with universities, but I paid more attention to that area because of the amount of work that is unfolding in the incubation space within universities. It's got their own ecosystems now, and I think it's an interesting place to think and watch. So I'm going to end my presentation here, and by saying that our job as the Trade Commission Service is to find new partners. And thank you to the BC government for being a partner. You'll hear from Odette a little while ago at the chamber, another great partner. Amir, again, a good partner for us here in Israel. And finally, NRC. NRC has been the backbone of what we do in Israel in tech, and a big shout out to my colleagues there. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you so much, Stanley, for your very comprehensive presentation on doing business in Israel and opportunities available for BC companies in various sectors and what Trade Commissioner Service in Israel can do for you. So now I'd like to pass the floor to Odette Orgil, President of the Canada-Israel Chamber of Commerce, for his presentation on building bridges between Canada and Israel. Odette, floor is yours.
Ghana, thank you very much, and thank you for having me on. Thank you for all your efforts, and Ben for stepping in and doing a great job, despite what you may think. It's also a pleasure to share the platform with the Consul General, Khalid Baram. We've done many events together, as well as my friend and partner in Tel Aviv, Stanley Gomez. So thank you all. Again, very appreciative to be on this program. So as you said, I mean, the Canada Chamber of Commerce, our mandate in many ways is to build bridges between Canada and Israel. You've got my name there, as well as Lior Abramovich, who is our Managing Director of Corporate Development, and really, as I often say, my right and left hand in helping me out and doing a number of things to support our membership base. Again, you can flip the next onto the next chart, next page. So again, what we feel, and Stanley somewhat touched upon this, I mean, again, there's a global mindset for a global world at the Canada Israel Chamber of Commerce. We're an NGO. Our membership is based, on, we've got a number of individual businesses, professionals and individuals across all the provinces in Canada who want to learn, and again, like the individuals on this show, learn about and potentially do business and trade, with Israeli companies and in the Israeli market space. Next slide, Jenna. Our mission, again, just to repeat myself one more time, is to foster and promote bilateral trade between Canada and Israel. We have an established, social forum for our professionals to meet with others and get acquainted to the Israeli market. We attempt, and we are always looking to update our members on the business opportunities and the enhanced bilateral trade that goes on. We've historically done this through personal events and dinners and luncheons and receptions. Currently, like everybody, we are doing these things virtually. We look forward to that time, and hopefully it's in the third or fourth quarter this year where we can get back to events. But just in the last 4 or 5 months, we've had about 7 virtual events. We've got 3 planned, including this one for the month of January, and already 1, if not 2, tentatively planned for February. So we're very busy, very active. I'll talk a little bit more about the kind of events we have. We provide panels, again, for speakers to discuss matters that are on Israel. We have a database that continues to grow, of our membership base that allows them to network and trade, find partners and individuals that they can work with both in Canada and Israel. This coming year, we will look to organize our first delegation. We've been involved in a number of others, partnering with provincial and federal governments and allowing individuals and corporations to go back and forth between Israel. And again, we will support, and we're excited to work with our federal and provincial partners. In this case, it's the government of BC. Also, we work with the government of Ontario historically, in Quebec, and we're looking to branch out across Canada with all the governments to help promote this trade. Next slide, Jenna. As I mentioned, again, we've had a number, our conferences cover a realm of, topics from educational to social to promotional. And again, these could be, things that are specifically and often directly related to Israel. And at times for our members, we'll provide lots of different events that will help our membership base just to help them grow their business in a variety of different ways. Next slide, Dana. Our structure, we have a business group, and this coming year, we're forming a young leadership group. Historically, the presentations have focused on investments, real estate, there's opportunities, capital markets. There's more and more business on that end between Israeli companies and Canadian companies who are looking to list in Canada, looking for investors, looking for support on that end. We've been involved in blockchain and cryptocurrency, just again, presenting opportunities on the technology side. I think Stanley alluded, these are many areas that Israel is very involved in. Canada provides a forum for some of these areas. And then again, for our young leadership, and again, if there are young people out there, we're looking to help them grow and develop their personal growth, business, as well as we do have a strong belief in SRI, the social responsibility as an organization. Next slide, Anna. So our services, when we talk about 3 areas, market expansion, again, it's the opportunity to work again with both the government of Israel and the government here in Canada, provincially and federally, putting people together. We have, we work with the Ministry of Tourism in Israel, the Israeli Ministry of Tourism here. We work with the Ministry of Economic Affairs, with the Consul General's office. Again, hoping to make introductions and helping Canadian businesses if they can't directly connect to our network of individuals. And giving them the opportunity to expand their market. News and events, we are on a variety of different social mediums, presenting and advising our membership base of opportunities and news that comes out from Israel on potential opportunities, that they could help them grow their businesses. And then exposure, again, again, we are, one of the things, we've got a new website that'll be up and running in about the next week. And again, on that website will be the opportunity for our businesses and membership members to present their product. We're looking at creating a marketplace to allow, again, our small, medium enterprises to share and work with other businesses and sell their products even within our own ecosystem. Next slide, Gana. So in the end, again, as a chamber of commerce, I mean, our number one mandate, again, overall, is to promote bilateral trade between Canada and Israel, and we do that with our partners, who I've mentioned now a few times. But in addition to that, again, just to create value for our membership base, which again ends up being mostly small businesses, but a lot of professionals and young people, and helping them grow and develop themselves and create opportunities for them. So if anybody is interested in hearing more, obviously I'll be here to answer any questions. My email's there, Lior's there, and happy to chat, as well as that information is on our website. So Gana, again, thank you. Thank you, Ben, as well, for taking over for Gana. I'll only reiterate one more thing that the Consul General said. I know that we are hopefully in the 7th inning of a 9th inning ball game with this COVID pandemic. I'd encourage everybody stay safe, stay positive, and looking forward to meeting many of you in person, over the next few months as we get through all this. So thank you very much, Gana, again, for all the work you've done, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Oded. Thanks for your presentation. I'm now conscious of the time left, so without further ado, I would like to introduce our next speaker for today, Amir Zaidman, Vice President of Business Development at The Kitchen, who will present on Israeli's food landscape.
So thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good morning to the folks in Canada, and evening to the people here in Israel. As Gana mentioned, my name is Amir Zaidman. I'm going to try to be conscious with the time, because we don't have much time left on this session. The presentation I'm going to give you is not about Israel's food, it's about Israel's food tech scene and what we do at the Kitchen Hub. When I'm saying food tech, just as a short explanation or as a background to set the ground, I'm talking about the startups that are active in Israel. The startup scenes were mentioned in presentation before me, but this is the sector of startups that are revolutionizing or disrupting the food industry, and we call that food tech, for those of you who are not familiar. So I'm going to start by telling you a couple of words about the Strauss Group, and the reason is that the Strauss Group is the parent company of the Kitchen Hub, and Strauss is Israel's largest food company. It operates in 22 different countries around the world with a turnover of about $2.5 billion. It has over 14,000 employees. It's a relatively large coffee company operating on a global scale. It's the largest company in the world for fresh dips and spreads. We know how to make hummus, and we sell it all over the world. I think in Canada, it's under the brand Obela, if I'm not mistaken. In the US, under Sabra. So this is about Strauss. Moving on. The Kitchen Hub is a technological incubator and an early stage investor in startups that are active in food tech. We consider ourselves companies builders because we provide a set of services other than the funding. We, of course, invest money. We provide a set of services and support, and we are commercializing or assisting our companies in commercialization. We are a part of an Israeli program, which is under the Israel Innovation Authority, which provides funding for startups. So the funding that we provide is partly industrial private money from the Strauss Group and partly from the Israeli Innovation Authority under the Incubators program. In most of the investors that you would see in venture capital are looking to work with existing startup companies. We do that, but we also have a model where we create our own startup companies. We search for technologies in academic institutions, and once we find something, an IP, a patent, a technology, science that is very interesting to us in our space, we license this underlying IP. We recruit a team, we provide the funding, and we launch a startup, and then we bring him into our program and support it to fruition. The support that we provide our companies, the startup companies, is like a layered model. First of all, there's us, there's the kitchen team with technology expert, business experts, and HR and operations. There's also the Strauss Group that supports us in any aspect that is required. Strauss, as I mentioned, is a fully integrated food company, so anything a food startup can require. And we have a global network of partners, which you can see on the map in this slide, which are working together with us for the benefit of our portfolio companies, some of the largest food companies in the world, from Mitsui conglomerate in Japan all the way to PepsiCo based in the US. All of those are working together with us. What we've done since launch, we've invested in 18 companies that altogether raised over $55 million. I don't want to go into all of the details for the benefit of time. So food tech. I'm going to turn from talking about the kitchen to talking about food tech in general. What do we see happening in food tech, and where is the innovation coming from? In my point of view, there's mainly 5 different areas, and the hottest and most important one is alternative proteins. We see the markets being swept with products based on different technologies, but those products are mostly from one of 3 sources or ingredients: plant-based proteins. We've seen that happening in dairy. A lot of the dairy that is now being consumed, specifically milk replacement, so almond milk and oats milk and soy, etc. We see this starting to happen in meat, companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. We have an initial traction in eggs, cheese, not so much yet, but again, plant-based is big. Cultivated proteins, which means that you take cells and you grow them into tissues, and single-cell proteins, which are based on renewable resources like fungi, yeast, and algae. So this is on the alternative protein side. We see a lot of new technologies coming from biotech into food, mostly fermentation technologies, which allows us to take microbes, different type of microorganisms, re-engineer them to basically produce whatever protein or enzyme that we want them to produce. And this is a huge trend now in food tech. A lot of issues around health and wellness, be it personalization of food or food that is better for you, both in terms that it's, well, less bad for you, so clean and short label and without any additives, or clean, food that actually has a lot of health benefits. So these are also things that are going into the market. Another big trend globally is convenience and logistics. So deliveries, and this got even so much bigger during COVID, but it was big before, and we anticipate it will stay that way. So, you know, delivery platforms from restaurants or from supermarkets, also meal kits where you get a box into your house and you can create your own meal. And not only a huge improvement online and delivery, also physical platforms that allows you to go into a supermarket and live without having to pass through the cash register, like Amazon Go, and there are a lot of startups that are developing these technologies for the benefit of supermarket chains that are not Amazon. And last but not least, sustainability, which is a huge thing, well, globally in many different segments, but specifically in food tech, because of the amount of impact that food has on the planet with packages and greenhouse gases, and the amount of food that is being wasted and lost. So a lot of startups are innovating in these areas of packaging, greenhouse gases, and reduction of food waste. So those are the global trends that we see. And I would like to give a very brief review of a few of the companies that we have in the kitchen, just so you'll know what it is that we are dealing with. So first company I want to talk about is called Zero Egg. It's a company that is developing plant-based egg. This egg is comes either in a form of a powder, which goes into industrial players, or a liquid, which can be used by anyone. And it can replace egg in any application that you can think of, starting with scramble and omelet, all the way to pastries and doughs that you need the eggs in. And even it can foam and create egg foam and meringues. So it's completely vegan, and it can replace egg in all applications. Another interesting company is a company that's called Aleph Farm. I talked about cultivated meat. So Aleph Farms is taking cells from cow, like a biopsy, and generating cell lines, and using biotech technologies and tissue engineering and cell biology, reproducing those cells to create tissues, muscle tissues, fat tissues that together combine to create pieces of meat, steaks that are real meat, just don't require butchering a cow to get them. So growing cells in biofermenters in order to create steaks, which are, again, real meat, but without slaughtering any cows. Legendary is doing something almost similar, but for dairy. So I talked about fermentation. They're using engineered microorganisms that can express the proteins that you would naturally find in dairy. So we can produce those dairy proteins without having to milk a cow. And then from there, from having those proteins, we reconstruct dairy products, which are not plant-based. They actually have the ingredients that you would find in real dairy products, like cheese, yogurts, milk, etc. So very, very close to the real thing. It's not plant-based. It's based on the same proteins that you will find in dairy, except we don't need the actual cows in order to produce those. Another company in proteins, I mentioned single-cell proteins. So Yeast is a company that is using yeast. So think about, okay, so yeast is a microorganism which is made mostly from proteins, like a lot of organisms. What we do is we break them up and we use the proteins that are naturally existing in yeast, no change required. There's no genetic engineering or anything. And the beautiful thing is that this company is relying on the beer industry that has using a lot of yeast for fermentation during the processing and producing of beer. And yeast is a side stream of that industry, and we can take the yeast from the beer industry and extract proteins from what is a side stream of another food, or in this case beverage industry. So completely circular economy approach in this. And the last, maybe more. Sorry. Amai Proteins is engineering proteins to replace sugar. So we all want to use less sweeteners, sugars, and calories. They are replacing sugars with proteins, which is an amazing idea. Vegetables, what you see on the right side is their product, and what you see on the left side is, if you take what's on the right side and you put it in a pot with boiling water for 5 minutes, you get a full meal. These are vegetables that are wrapping a meal inside them. And it's a ready-to-cook meal, which is completely healthy and extremely tasty and beautiful, which is made from otherwise discarded vegetables that the supermarkets would not put on display in the supermarket, on the shelves, because they don't look good. So we take them, we slice them up, we make sort of sheets out of them and create those pouches and fill them up with nutritious and tasty meals. And the the vegetable, the outside is a part of the meal. And this is the last one. There's a huge demand for natural vanilla, which is coming almost exclusively from Madagascar. Vanilla Vida is changing that and developing technologies for indoor farming of vanilla and unique technologies for the curing, for taking the green vanilla beans, which has almost no flavor and aroma, and creating the black vanilla beans with very unique technology that allows the control of the different steps in that matter. So this is a quick review of some of the companies that we cook in the kitchen, all of them with very promising potential and technologies. Very, very briefly about what's happening in food tech in Israel. I only have a couple of slides on that. So we continuously, as the Kitchen Hub, we work with our Startup Nation Central, and we continuously mapping what's happening in Israeli food tech and agri-food tech. This is a map that we release annually about the different sectors and different startups that are active in the different sectors. I don't want to go into all the details of the statistics that are on this slide. You can have you have these slides on the handout, so you can see it for yourself. This is also data from Startup Nation Central. Just to mention that during you can see the equity investments trend in food tech in Israel, which is growing. On the left side is the amount of money that was invested, and you can see that in 2020 we are going to be the most or the best year in investing in food tech to date, with over $200 million invested in Israeli food tech startups. And I'm going to skip that, just to mention that other than investing, we are also doing events and meetups, and we have an annual event. The last one was in September. We didn't do one in 2020. This is the main food tech event in Israel. It is called Food Tech IL. And in the last one, we had a representative from 45 different countries, and altogether almost 1,500 attendees. And with that, I'm gonna thank you and give you my contact, which is right here on the bottom of the slide. And I'll be waiting for your questions if you have any at the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amir. Thanks for this mouth-watering presentation. And without further ado, I wanted to introduce our last speaker, Wei Nin, the National Program Coordinator at the National Research Council of Canada, for his presentation on the Eureka call for proposals.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Wei Ning, Industrial Technology Advisor, and also the Program Coordinator for Canada-Israel Industrial Collaboration Program with the National Research Council Canada Industrial Research Assistance Program. Next one. The National Research Council Canada is the federal government's premier R&D organization, and is committed to advancing knowledge through science, supporting business innovation, and supporting government of Canada's science agenda, including the innovation and the skills plan. Next. So the Industrial Research Assistance Program, in brief, the services it offers is the technical business advice, provide financial assistance to companies that conduct innovation projects, and then link SMEs with the local and international opportunities. And there is a small team within Arab, is Arab International. The mandate is to connect Canadian innovators with international R&D partners to help them grow their business beyond Canada's borders. Next. I'd like to bring to your attention about the Canada-Israel Eureka Call for Proposal. Working with the Israel Innovation Authority, IIA, NRC Arab, important partner in Israel, we launched the call in last November the 3rd for joint R&D projects between Canadian and Israeli organizations. And in Canada, only SMEs can be considered for funding through NRC Arab. The other Canadian participants, they can participate in the projects, but they have to secure funding from the other sources. Next. Although this call invites proposals related to any technical or market area, special attention is being given to the listed sectors, including health and biosciences, digital technology, agriculture technology, and clean technology. And behind each focus, there are some subsectors. I'm not going to go into the detail. Ghana can forward my presentation to all the participants after this webinar. Next. The registration for this round of call for proposal is next week, January 21st. And the Canadian expression of interest submission deadline is 27th. The consortium agreement, the joint proposal, the deadline is March 18th to be completed by both Canadian and Israeli companies. For the detailed registration guidelines, I provided a web link over here. It offers a step-by-step guidance to whether you are not qualified for this round of a call for proposal, how to apply, and etc. Next. For Canadian SMEs to apply the company here in Canada, you must have a innovative technology, process, software, and etc. It's not for like a duplication of what has already been done or what has already been successfully marketed in the market. For Canadian SMEs, minimum 10 people employee and minimum $1 million in revenue. Next. To be considered for potential funding, the applicants, they must form a consortium with a company or organization in Israel. In Canada, again, is SME company with less than 500 people. And then the Canadian research organizations can participate as subcontractor. Next. The eligible project participants selected by Arab and in Israel in these collaborative projects. The funding is from NRC Arab, and the first and foremost, the proposed projects needs to meet Arab funding rules and regulations. And most important requirement is for the financial contribution. No one country company should contribute more than 70% of the total project cost and less than 30% of the total project cost. And I think traditionally, there are a lot of questions regarding this particular requirement. I have provided my email address at the end of the presentation. So send me an email if you are interested in this round of call, and then need more clear answer on this particular requirement. Next. In Canada, this call for proposal, again, offered through NRC IRAP. And then NRC IRAP, the Industrial Technology Advisor, is responsible for delivering and managing the proposed project and also the funding. The eligible Canadian SME will receive up to 50% reimbursement of eligible project cost, and up to maximum total funding amount of 600,000 Canadian dollars over 12 to maximum 12 months. And if you request more than 12 months, then that will be treated case by case basis, and then discuss the extension with your industrial technology advisor. And then to identify a industrial technology advisor, if your company current does not have one, I have provided a phone number for you to call. The people answer is client engagement advisor. He is going to help you identify a industrial technology advisor for you to discuss your proposed project for this round of call or your future potential projects. Next. In Israel, this call for proposal is offered through the Israel Innovation Authority, IIA, which is responsible for delivery of this call and also management of any resulting funding arrangements and agreements. Financial support may be provided to eligible Israeli companies in support of the industrial research or technological development activities. The Israeli companies may receive up to 50% of the Israeli R&D cost, and also the plus incentives. For the detail, and you should consult with IIA. I have also provided the contact link. Next. I'm not going to go through the detailed application process over here. And then I provided a website. Please visit this particular website. It offered a step-by-step process for both Canadian and Israeli companies to discuss the proposed project with each respective authority and also the people responsible. Next. In Canada, first register if you are interested. The deadline again is January 21st. And then once you qualify and you will be given a expression of interest template for you to fill, the deadline is January 27th. Next. For Israeli application process, again, consult the website here provided. Next. In Canada, I am your contact person, and you have my email address here. And Israel, my counterpart, Ifad, is the contact person, and her email is over here. Ghana, you can forward my presentation to all the participants here. And for those people interested and have questions, please just send questions to my email, and then I will answer you as soon as I can. Thank you. That is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Wei. I think we're over time already, but we're going to try to address some of the questions that have come in. We've got quite a few questions that have come in between during the presentations as well as during the registration process. We won't be able to answer all of those. But that said, if you have other questions, please continue to send them to the questions pane, and we can respond to those after the session is over. I think we'll just jump in with a question that I think we will direct toward Ghana, and that was, do all free trade agreements cover aquaculture? Ghana, are you able to answer that?
Thank you, Ben. Yes, and thanks for the question. So all free trade agreements cover goods, and aquaculture is part of goods. And many of free trade agreements, as it has already been mentioned today, they have tariff reductions or tariff eliminations for the specific fish and seafood products. So if you are interested in a specific free trade agreement, please do reach out to me or to my colleague Ben, and we'll be happy to have a look and to see what are the provisions under a specific free trade agreement for aquaculture if you are interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghana. The next question I think we will pose to Stanley, and the question is, what is the landscape like between Israel and the rest of the Middle East? If I am to set up a business branch in Israel, is it possible to freely ship products into the rest of the Middle East? Stanley, are you able to speak to that at all?
I'll take a quick shot at it with what we've seen in the last, I'd say 12 months. There's a general theme that there is a big interest between the Arab countries to do business with Israel. It's been happening in the past, less in the news, but it is definitely, Israel has been invited to Expo in Dubai and of course accepted. So I would assume that movement of goods and services will be fine and continue to grow in great lengths, I would imagine, in the next few months and years. In fact, we went from 0 flights from Dubai to Tel Aviv less than a couple of months ago, and now we have, 10 of them a day. So I think you'll be fine, but you can certainly reach back and we'll check on a few things for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Stanley. I think I'll just stick with you here and see if you have anything to say on any regulations related to dietary supplements like probiotics and medicinal herbs to Israel. And I realize that this may be something that you want to discuss with any of your colleagues, but if you have anything to say on that at this point?
Yeah, basically all that stuff is regulated, and it's the information is readily available. It's just send me a note, and my colleague Vanessa, she's on the line here actually. But if you send me a note, we'll get back to you with any specific question. But mainly Israel follows what the FDA does and the European regulatory systems. It's very consistent, so easy to find, but send us your specific questions and we'll be happy to answer.
Okay, great, Stanley. And would that also be anyone with questions on labeling requirements? Could they do the same thing?
Absolutely. The labeling, again, there are specific labelings for Israel, and the new policies are coming out. And then the last year, there's been some changes. Nothing too complicated to what we do in North America, so it should not be a problem, but all the same, give us a shout and we'll send you the latest on what that is.
Terrific, thank you. This next question is for Wei. With regards to Eureka, how many calls per year to apply are there, or is there just one call per year for applications? Are you able to jump in there? It looks like you're unmuted, Wei.
Yes, here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is the first call for proposal under Eureka between Canada and Israel, and there is no formal agreement regarding the future calls, but we believe there will be future calls for proposal next year, maybe around at the same time next year.
Great, thank you. The next question is on whether or not sweets and confectionery have to be kosher to export to Israel. Stanley, are you able to speak to that?
Yep. So generally speaking, there is very little strict kosher requirements for import-export. But I should note that because it is a country that keeps kosher a lot, you're probably likely to hit limits in what you import based on what the consumer will buy. So again, send us your question and your specific product, and we'll check it out. Yeah, I know that there are lots of places where it doesn't matter, and then equally there are a lot of the big supermarket chains, just to keep life simple, based on consumer demand, will tend to buy kosher stuff.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to just suggest that we follow up on the remainder of the questions. As I said, there have been quite a few that came in today, as well as during the registration. I know we're well over time here, so I'd like to let everyone get back to their days. Thank you, Consul General and Stanley and Oded and Amir and Wei and Ghana and everyone for attending today's webinar. Once again, I apologize for the technical issues that we all experienced. If you have any other questions, please contact us at the contact details that you could see in our presentations. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to view a recording of today's webinar, assuming that the technical issues have not damaged that, but also PDF files of the presentations along with a survey, and we would really appreciate it if you can complete that survey and provide your feedback. On behalf of the BC government and all of our speakers, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.